Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Wilds talk. With the August patch about to strike, it's time to talk weapons and weapon changes. That's because just like the mid-title update 1 patch, we actually have another set of weapon changes coming in this August patch for TU2. The way they describe these changes are upwards adjustments, so it's overall a buff. And amazingly, this includes weapons like dual blades and hunting horn, which have both skyrocketed in performance with their TU2 changes. But these are two weapons that are still expecting upwards adjustments. Further, we know that weapons that do actually need some more attention, like lance and the bowguns, they're getting this treatment as well. But that's all before they announce that these adjustments are actually going to cover more than their first plan. Could there then be hope for a bow? Maybe some gameplay loop changes for switch axe and insect glaive? Let's discuss all of it. We begin with maybe the most confusing one for me right now, which is dual blades, one of my favourite weapons. Dual Blades is performing super well thanks to TU2, with the motion value changes feeling great, but also literal combo changes that open up ways to fight. We can now land a demon boost evade, and then combo that straight into a Blade Dance 2, and then maybe into a 3. Sure, we could discuss the fact that Demon Flurry 1 is just so effective and valuable, maybe you'd still want to do that instead. But now, if you've landed an evade against an attack, you can go into Blade Dance 2 and likely 3 for a punish that's simply very effective in that context. But let's consider these changes properly. Now in TU2, movement speed was increased for demon mode, which was wonderful. But it's stuff like how they increased the raw for 6-fold demon slash, aka D6, one of our most important demon gauge builders. A big problem for dual blades is the fact that they're very much an element weapon. Element hasn't been great in Wild so far. So we're looking at the way they're changing things to give more raw to certain attacks and how it's actually having a big impact. Because they also did this for Demon Flurry and Demon Flurry Rush. Then you got Screw Slicer, the special attack follow-up after a demon boost dodge. Its raw, element, and ailment scaling were all greatly increased, so suddenly that's become a more rewarding attack, letting you gap close and move from one location to another while dealing good damage. Funnily, this does go against the choice of the new combo into Blade Dance 2 after the evade, but at least it's a choice and they're both good. They also increased the raw of the focus strike itself, which was something we did for stamina recovery and demon gauge building anyway. And importantly, they tweaked Heavenly Blade Dance Raw up, while normal Blade Dance Element and Ailment went slightly down, in exchange for more Raw though. Meanwhile, Demon Boost mode itself, it provides less Raw than it did, but it gives more Element while active. So overall, we're dealing more Raw damage in general, and certain attacks are noticeably better. Alongside the new combo option, this update has felt really good and has taken the weapon's really nice Wilds flow already to new heights. The idea that we're going to get more upwards adjustments though, is starting to make less sense, but I'm not going to say no. What could that even be? I asked myself, what do I find irritating with this form of dual blades, and it's not exactly a long list. But here's a couple things I'd like. I want to be able to control my focus strike, the turning tide spin. I want to be able to turn around. If I start at the head, I want to turn around and land at the head every single time that I want, instead of being forced to go down the length and landing nowhere near a good hit zone, or sometimes just being forced off instantly, which is a weird one. Second to that, it would be awesome if they increased our perfect evade window for the purpose of maintaining demon boost mode. You normally do this by adding levels of evade window into your build, and by the time you hit 3 or 4 levels of it, it feels super forgiving and fantastic. But with current builds trying to push everything to the max, you don't really have a lot of room for evade window. That then leaves you eating for it through specific food buffs that, with specific feasts will work. But I'm starting to get low on feast tickets now, and it is kind of invasive to always have to do that. Still, it feels very greedy to even ask for that, so otherwise I'm unsure what they might do. I think it feels like it's in a great place now, so I'm interested to see. Next for shocking upwards adjustments then, we have Hunting Horn. Hunting Horn has had quite the pile of problems in this version, largely due to the Artian meta. Since you can't choose your melodies on the Hunting Horn, you'd normally be picking for the ideal mix of monster weapon and songs you want. So there's good potential behind the output, but also the melodies you need. Though it did go a bit beyond them having lacking weapon choices. There's a lot of setup for Hunting Horn and careful placement too. You want that triple echo bubble setup to echo the notes out as effectively as you can. Having them in like a triangle formation is great, but what if the monster just moves away from them? All that time setting up, wasted. So over the last bit, we've seen some improvements to Hunting Horn, especially in TU2. Now for your focus strike, you get an extra note to work with, but it also sets down another echo bubble on that location if you want, which not only helps echo management, but generation through the fight. The echo bubble itself also has a much better hitbox, which has a big impact on this aspect of the kit. Other things like resounding melody now triggers a shockwave, the evade window for offset melody, that's better, and you even got moving performances while on a seikret, which is nice. But it is an important update for echo bubbles. I think that's been great. The results have been telling, with Hunting Horn shooting up towards middle of the pack in best clears compared to being pretty much near the back. For further changes, I again want to see them get more control over melody options. Letting you have full choice over artian weapon and melodies that are on those would be great. But since I don't play a ton of Hunting Horn, I want to ask you guys, what is it you'd still want to see in further buffs? Obviously it's doing well now, so I'm interested to hear what you feel it's still missing. Moving on then, we have an obvious one, Lance. Lance received some fantastic improvements from new attack options compared to the beta, output increases, more, and even in Title Update 2, it did have some new options included. But the problem with Lance remains what it always is, and that's output. They just don't do competitive damage compared to the rest of the weapons, at least on average. Your top performers are always multiple minutes behind most of the weapons when it comes to top speedruns, and it's not through poor gameplay or mistakes in that context, that's for sure. They just don't have as much damage, and that's been the problem. Therefore, obviously, having damage increases for Lance in this update would be great. But hey, if there's new combos or new options for them in these changes, beyond just motion values, that'd be a welcome thing too. Now though, it's time to talk Bowgun. Both Bowguns have been listed as weapons with upwards adjustments in this update, but what will they be? Well, it's always been my opinion for light Bowgun that the DPS potential's been great, but the mechanics are dry as hell in wilds. Going from the crazy movement and tricks of Rise to essentially just being grounded on the floor, mostly free firing over and over, with one or maybe two ammos being used in most cases, it's not quite as engaging for me. Light Bowgunners have definitely proven how strong the weapon can be though, thanks to say its ability to burst step, a little trick about maximizing your gauge and the special short step you get while that gauge is active. Or say its solid element output, if the monster has good hit zones for that, or with their ability as a ranged weapon and an agile one at that, to just shoot the weak zones of a monster the whole time. So no matter where it is, the wing arm, a special spike on the back, melee weapons have to struggle for windows and opportunities to hit those. Bowgunners, especially the free-flowing light ones, they just get to blast it the whole time. So overall, I'd like to see some output improvements for light bowgun just based on the bigger differences we see between non-heroics and heroics runs, but mainly I'd like to see new mechanics, more for them to do. I know it's a big part of light bowgun to just be a machine gun with shots that dodge around, and this more grounded nature in wilds is neat, but I just loved Rise's movement and the variety of mechanics for the weapon. Compared to heavy bowgun in wilds, you can really tell that light bowgun didn't get as much there, so I'd like to see more. But speaking of, we also have heavy bowgun. Unlike its lighter version, this one actually gets new mechanics in wilds. You've got a similar gauge system, sure, but more of a variety of how that can be used. You've actually got a guard, which means you can perfect guard, which means you can tank up close, or trigger the new clashes. You've also got the new offset as a ranged weapon, which is crazy. Obviously you need the gauge to be active for it, and it does take some setup, but is very effective. Yet where it lacks clearly is output. As a weapon that usually dominates in that category, it's strangely lacking in wilds. Part of that, as I discussed with Josh, could come down to the situation with ammos. Heavy bowgun's always been a monster of choice, that arsenal of shot types for every situation. Machine gun, piercing through long enemies, shotgunning up close with spread, sticky explosive firing mortars, sniping. All of that feels a bit tamer in wilds, even after their recent attempt to improve spread, which I started to see used, to be fair. Overall, I would expect more improvements to output than mechanical changes, but that wouldn't be a bad thing. Maybe ammo improvements and changes could be the way. But those are the weapons we knew we'd get changes for in this update. But as they said, more balance adjustments are coming to cover more weapons than they originally planned. The three that I want to highlight for this then are, firstly, bow. Bow mechanically is ultra good in wilds. Not only can you just consistently pour damage out through consistent DPS, but also you can never really be stopped thanks to how very kind of forgiving discerning dodge is. Much like the demon boost mode dodge of dual blades, but even more forgiving, like I was saying. Josh describes it as super fun, but also super smooth. And really, what we would just hope to see is output, motion values being bumped up. It was an absolute killer in the beta, and then they may have over-nerfed it into the launch version and never really resolved that. Also, element does play a role in that. Element hasn't been great throughout wild so far, starting to be more relevant these days. But there are some strange choices that have happened for bow, like Josh was telling me about the clearly over-nerfed Dragon Piercer, which had actually become a legit playstyle at launch. And it wasn't like it was overpowered, it was just a solid option and a way to play. When they nerfed that, it suggested that they don't like playstyles that are all just one attack spam as much as possible. Which is funny, because isn't that exactly what's going on with switch axe and insect glaive? Either way, it seems they've over nerfed certain aspects of Bow's kit, and hopefully they can kind of rewind that a little bit. Maybe we could see a resurgence for Bow players, which would be awesome. The other two weapons I want to mention have similar issues though, as we just highlighted, switch axe and insect glaive. Now, to be fair to switch axe, it did have quite a few positive changes in Title Update 2, where say your element switch axes and those vials are a lot more relevant. And that's great because you can actually amp up faster. We got to change the meta around power prolonger because of that. Undeniably, it felt better. But at the same time, am I doing anything other than building up amp gauge and then trying to full release as much as possible? Interrupting that to say sword counter or maybe offset sometimes? But it's pretty much just how many times can I full release, and I want to full release more. That is Ultra 1 no. Ultra 1 attack. It's just at least they do have gauge systems to build up and go in and out of, compared to just doing Dragon Piercer over and over, to be fair. Jumping over to Insect Glaive, it's Rising Spiral Slash and that repetitive gameplay loop that's about building up your essences and dumping them into the Spiral Slash. The performance of Insect Glaive has not been bad, and people have been getting away with this pretty much at the top of the power of weapons overall. Until recently, it's been pretty telling that this weapon performs so insane against monsters where you get great value out of that Rising Spiral Slash and its upwards motion, versus ones where you basically get none. The recent Arch-Tempered Duna is a great example of that, but also is Seregios, where you want to be hitting the legs and then Spiral Slash just goes up through the body and away from them. If you can go up into the target and get great value, like say Zoshia into the head and through into the wing arms, that was absolutely insane value. But because most of their kit seems to be in that Rising Spiral Slash and dumping into that, monsters that just don't really reward that, it's been a problem. So for both Switch Axe and Insect Glaive, I want to see them center around one attack a lot less. This means buffing up their other parts of their kit, encouraging new gameplay, and maybe toning it down on that one attack. It requires careful balancing though, because imagine you nerfed Rising Spiral Slash or full release for Switch Axe, but then didn't do enough for the rest of the kit, it'd just be a terrible nerf. But for now, that's all I can say really. I am interested to see what changes come and also what were the extra weapons they picked and why. Let me know what you're thinking and what you might actually hope for. And of course, we'll be covering it all as it happens. So until then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.